As much as Holden Caulfield tried to enjoy himself at the Lavender Room, it was a fizzer. The band was corny, the waiter refused to sell him alcohol, and the 3 women he met were rude to him. Then again, what was a teenager doing in a New York City nightclub by himself? As he sat in the lobby of the Edmond Hotel, Holden couldn't stop thinking about Jane Gallagher. The fact that his sleazy roommate, Stradlater, had taken her on a date earlier that night drove him mad. Holden really felt like he got to know Jane that summer back in Maine. He sat and reminisced about how they met, their golf games, the way her mouth moved, and her good taste in books. He'd even showed her Allie's baseball mitt, which he never showed anyone except family. Holden's mum didn't like Jane, but Holden really liked her. One time, they were playing checkers on her porch when Jane's alcoholic stepfather came out looking for cigarettes. She ignored him and started to cry. She wouldn't say why, so Holden sat next to her and kissed her all over her head. Hey team, just a reminder, if you like this video, please hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It really helps the channel out, and our next upload could be on something taught in your next class. Thanks, and back to the video. They never kissed on the mouth, but they held hands all the time. Even sitting in the movies, Jane was great to hold hands with. Now Stradlater had laid his dirty paws all over her in the back seat of a parked car. The thought nearly drove Holden crazy. He had to get out of that stinking hotel. Besides, it wasn't that late. Holden went up to his room, grabbed his coat, and caught a cab to Ernie's piano bar in Greenwich Village. The cab stank, and the driver was snarky. Horwitz was his name. Just like with the previous cabbie, Holden asked Horwitz if he knew where the ducks in Central Park South went in the wintertime. Horwitz had no idea, but then he started banging on about the frozen fish and how they had it tougher than the ducks. It was a weird conversation, but Holden still invited him for a drink. Horwitz declined and just dropped Holden at Ernie's. The place was packed, mostly with college kids, and they were all glued to Ernie on the piano. Holden wasn't a fan of Ernie, but everyone else thought he was the bee's knees. The waiter also stuck Holden at a lousy table, hemmed in by couples on dates. Awkward. Then he heard someone yell his name. It was Lillian Simmons, one of his older brother's ex-girlfriends. She was there on a date with some Navy guy who looked constipated. Lillian was so fake and annoying, Holden almost felt sorry for her. But when she invited Holden to sit at their table, he lied and said he had to go meet somebody. This meant that after they moved off, Holden had to leave so he didn't look rude. How annoying! Holden walked 41 blocks all the way back to the hotel. He couldn't face getting a cab, even though it was freezing. As he walked, Holden wondered which crook at Pensy had stolen his gloves. Not that he would have done much about it. He hates fighting. When he got back to the hotel, the elevator guy, who was also a pimp, asked Holden if he wanted to hire a prostitute. Now, this was where Holden's night got really messed up. He lied about his age again, said he was interested in a girl, and agreed on the price. $5 for a single session. She would be at his room in 15 minutes. In the meantime, Holden started to get nervous. He'd messed around with girls before, but never gone all the way. When the prostitute arrived, she was anxious to get the show on the road. The problem was, Holden was no longer in the mood. He felt more depressed than anything, so he asked the girl, whose name was Sunny, if they could just talk for a while. He lied about having just had an operation on his spinal cord, which was why he was unable to perform. Sonny tried to flirt with Holden and get him in the mood, but he wasn't having it. When she got annoyed, he assured her that she would still get paid and grabbed his wallet. All of a sudden, she doubled the price to $10, but Holden refused to be scammed. He paid her the $5 and she left in a huff. It was nearly dawn at that point, and Holden felt absolutely miserable. He got into bed and tried to pray, but his brain wouldn't let him rest. Then he heard a loud knock on the door. It was Maurice, the elevator pimp, and Sonny. They'd come to collect the $5 Holden supposedly owed them. Uh-oh. They barged in, and Maurice intimidated Holden while Sonny helped herself to his wallet. She took out a $5 note and waved it in the air. At that moment, Holden started to cry and talk smack to Maurice. So Maurice got physical. Holden doubled down on the insults, like he did to Stradlater, until Maurice punched him hard in the gut. Sonny and Maurice left Holden lying on the floor, breathless and in agony. When he finally stumbled to the bathroom, he imagined he'd been shot. He fantasized about staggering out of the room and shooting Maurice in his fat stomach, just like in a gangster movie. Jane Gallagher would then come over to nurse Holden in his hotel room. But this wasn't a movie, and Holden was no tough guy. So he took a lonely bath, crawled into bed, and wallowed in suicidal thoughts. Holden only managed to get a few hours sleep and woke around 10 a.m. He smoked 2 cigarettes for breakfast and called up Sally Hayes, his part-time girlfriend. He wasn't too crazy about her, but he still invited her to see a show that afternoon. Then Holden got dressed, packed up, checked out of that stinking Edmont hotel, and took a cab to Grand Central Station. He didn't know where else to go, and he still had 3 days to kill before going home. But at least at the station, he could safely stow his bags while he took Sally to a show and figured out his next move. At the station, Holden bought himself a proper breakfast. When a couple of nuns entered the sandwich bar, he helped them with their suitcases. He knows this is bad, but he hates it when people have cheap-looking suitcases. It brings out the snob in him. But he struck up a conversation with the nuns and gave them a generous $10 donation. That's the modern equivalent of over $100. Both of the nuns were teachers, and Holden chatted mostly with the one who taught English. He told her about the books he'd read and what his thoughts were on Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. It was a bit awkward because that's a pretty raunchy play, but she asked, so he told her. He liked talking to that nun. She reminded him of Mrs. Morrow from the train. He was also glad the nuns didn't ask him if he was Catholic. That question tends to spoil good conversation. Holden still had 2 hours to kill before his date with Sally. Surely he could stay out of trouble in the meantime. Right, Holden? We hope you enjoyed this Schooling Online production. For more easy lessons, check out our other videos.